Welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to look at creaser and folder tools. We've got our edge creasers and our folders. We're going to check out essentially what they're used for. We're going to look at different types and variations that exist. And then we're going to share a few tips on what to keep in mind when you're looking to buy one. So with that, let's dive right in. So we've got two primary tools that we're going to look at. There is the folder and the creaser. And primarily, they're intended to put creases into the leather. Often it's for aesthetics, sometimes it's for function. So where the folder is going to be putting creases into that material, the creaser is going to be putting, actually creases into that material's edge, or wherever you may want to put it. So let's look a little more closely at each type. So this one is a bone folder, and it's made of natural bone. And so because of that, they come in various colors. Some are naturally colored, like this one. You could also find some that are bleached white, so you have a consistent look and feel. And what these do, there's a couple different purposes for this tool. First and foremost, it's for, creasing. And so you may want to do that when you've got a piece of leather that's a little bit thicker and you're looking to create a fold point for it. So there are some tools that actually remove the leather itself. If you've got a very thick leather, that may be the better option to go. If you've got a thin leather, for example, we could do something like this and essentially put a crease in that material, which will then make it a little bit easier, when we create that fold. There's now going to be a fold line that we've got. Because it's very smooth, it's generally not going to hurt your leather when it comes in contact or leave many marks. So if you're gluing, you may want to use a folder to kind of put pressure on the items that are being glued without leaving marks on the top of the leather. Obviously test it out first on a scrap piece. You don't want to learn the hard way that it will indent that particular leather that you're working on, though it can be used for that. It can also be used for if you are doing any kind of wet forming and trying to, get into a small crevice in that form, you could use this without, scratching the inside of the leather. It'll just kind of be a nice rounded point that you could use to push on that molded piece. And then there's another cool use. Say you are working with some kind of a lining, maybe you're making a luxury leather belt or something, and you want to be able to glue it pretty precisely onto here. You could use something like a folder to do just that. For example, you can kind of put it under the material. Let's make it a little bit shorter. There we go. And so you can kind of get under there and then really fold that over and get a nice tight line. And if this were to be glued, then you can kind of press in right here, press down on the top, and really create a nice secure area where this item is glued to this. Because of this, bookbinders use these a lot because it helps them with the binding process and getting, again, those really tight fits in there. So that's overall the bone folder. Price ranges aren't too out there, and they're a pretty basic, simple tool that has a lot of uses. So definitely recommend getting one. You'll probably find you use it more than you think. Next, we have the Creaser and Embosser machine. So these are really great, and they could be used for a number of different reasons and really good purposes. So essentially, they are electrically powered machines that have a heated tip, and those tips are interchangeable. So you could have tips for burnishing, for embossing, for creasing. And so in this case, we'll focus on the creasing aspect of it. And so whereas before we were creating creases manually by hand pressure, this uses the heat generated by the tool, which can give a very precise indentation in the leather in a very consistent way. So while it's more expensive, it's definitely an option if you're doing higher production work or if you want really precise, repeatable creases in your leather. These can be excellent options. And we often find high-end creasers being used on high-end leather work. So for example, luxury handbags, belts, accessories, where they're creating a very polished end product where consumers would expect it to be the same if they're buying it now or a year from now or in different places. That's where the powered creasers give you that repeatability and a high quality fit and finish. And then we have our edge creaser. This is a very basic tool that's typically used in two ways. One is we could use it manually. So for example, say we want to put a crease on this edge, we simply come in here, we put the tool down on the edge, and then we press it forward, and it gives us a nice crease right there. So that's going to be highly dependent on the manual pressure that we apply, while we're pushing that in there. Another thing we could do is use a small heating lamp, and that heating lamp will warm up this tip, and then that'll make it much easier to go into this leather, and it'll usually leave a deeper mark as well as you're putting in that crease. If we're using an electrically powered edger, we're going to have more consistent results because the temperature is going to be the same. If we're using this with a small, heating flame or lamp, the heat variations are going to be greater, and so our consistency will be trickier to get. Not impossible, but a lot more difficult. If we're doing it manually, that obviously takes heat out of the equation, and so it just comes down to the practice that you've got and how consistent the pressure you're using to make these lines. So definitely a cool tool. Pretty basic again when it comes to leatherworking tools. It's a very manual one and also effective one. So tips for buying folders and creasers. When looking at a folder, I'd say get a high quality bone folder, and they come in different shapes. So think about what end purpose you're trying to make it for, and you could find a shape if it's more squared, if it's got a more angled edge, if it's rounder, and you could essentially find one that's going to fit your crafting style and what you're going to use it for most. So I'd say check for that. Color, it's really up to you. You can get the bleached white versions, or you can get the natural bone color. It's totally personal preference. When looking at the creasers come in different sizes depending on the width of the crease you're trying to make. For example, this one is a number 5. The sizes will usually vary a little bit by the manufacturer, so get familiar with that manufacturer to make sure that if you're buying different sizes or a range of sizes, you'll kind of know what that means and what it'll look like in your end result. In terms of quality, like most tools, the quality one is going to be generally give you better results. So you can try out different manufacturers, find one that you really like and that are comfortable with, and then kind of go with that. And maintenance for them is relatively low. Just make sure they're cleaned. And if you're using any other kind of accessories, with them, such as a heating lamp or something like that, or a heating flame, just keep everything clean, well maintained, and your tool, will last a really long time. It's just a basic, very manual tool. So there you have it. Those are our creasers and folders. If you have any questions, let us know. And if you have any good experiences with them, also let us know. We'd love to hear them. And until next time, keep crafting.